I'll go ahead and get started here. My name is Cameron Bloom. I run adult services over at the C.C. Mellor Memorial Library in Edgewood. And I am very honored and very delighted today to be co-hosting this book launch party for Charlie Brice and Jim Hutt. So Charlie Brice won the 2020 Field Guide Poetry Magazine Poetry Contest and placed third in the 2021 Allen Ginsberg Poetry Prize. His chapbook, All the Songs Sung, and his fourth poetry collection, The Broad Grin of Eternity, both arrived in 2021. His poetry has been nominated for the Best of Net Anthology and 3 times for a Pushcart Prize. He's appeared in The Honest Ulsterman, Ibbotson Street, the Patterson Literary Review, Inspired Magazine, and many more. I was very excited when Charlie came to me and asked if we could do a book launch party, in part because I've worked at the library for several years and I've never gotten a chance to work with Charlie before. So I was very glad to get the opportunity to do that. And I was also very excited because Charlie is just the kind of person who, no matter what he's talking to you about, no matter what he's bringing to you, it's the best thing in the world. And, you know, it's a great feeling. There are so few people like that. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Charlie Brice.
Thank you so much, Cam. And I want to thank Cameron for his incredible job that he's done here with our reading. You know, it's just such a pleasure to work with him and everyone at that library. And if you get a chance, go to the C.C. Mellor Library website and contribute, because they're a great library, and libraries, you know, are in need these days, especially. So if you've got a mind to, I'd certainly appreciate some donation for them. Now, I just want to remind, it looks like everybody's on mute, and that's really nice. Just want to remind everyone to stay on mute, except for the speakers. The first speaker tonight, you know, people criticize Facebook, and I'm sure they're correct in all their criticisms. But one of the wonderful things about Facebook is I've gotten to meet some tremendous poets, and foremost among them is Ace Boggess. He's the author of 6 books of poetry. Here's 5 of them. One of them has a lewd cover, and I can't show it. No, that's not true. But it's a great. His poetry is fantastic. Here's the most recent one. It's called Escape Envy. I've read every word in here. It's wonderful. He's the author of 6 books of poetry. His poems have appeared in Michigan Quarterly Review, Notre Dame Review, Harvard Review, Rattle, you know, all the secondary and lesser journals. Anyway, Ace, thank you so much for reading with us tonight. And why don't you go ahead and begin?
Thank you, Charlie. And congratulations to you and Jim on the new book. Holding my copy right here. Half tempted just to read the blurb and call it a night. This is my newest, Escape Envy. It's been out May of last year, so the sales rate right now is pandemic oriented. It's actually the second book that I've had out during the pandemic, and the first one didn't do well at all. This one's doing much better. Let's start with a poem called I Was Heading for Georgia But Saw the Sunrise. In Virginia, the last 10 miles or so, as the interstate dripped down the side of a high top at 5% grade, nothing but view to my left. Across the valley, I spotted that mountain shaped like a turtle, shell side and budding neck, poking its lone head above a silk line of mist. Red and orange set along the fog's plain like stemless blooms of roses bobbing in a pond, like candles on a silver cake. For those few minutes, I had no destination, no hotel room in Columbus, no acquaintances to make. It was as though I stole a pause from life, then froze it without aid of camera's lens. Before my car descended past the tree line and on into North Carolina, where it might as well be raining. And it was. This book is sort of the conclusion of a trilogy, if you can have that in poetry, that began with The Prisoners, which I wrote in prison, followed by Ultra Deep Field, which was written while I was on parole. And this book is written about freedom, and it is largely about my travels since I've been free. On one of my favorite trips, took a trip to the Huntington Museum.
Do you know what to do?
This is a day trip to the Huntington Museum of Art. Great walk Renoir without slowing. I follow, saying, Renoir, as if I'm a boy navigating the toy aisle at the supermarket, begging his mother and father, I want the Renoir. Can I have the Renoir? Please, please, please. She tells me, it's not one of his best. But I, not having seen one up close before, double back, stand, stare, dazzled and a bit confused by the red, orange, umber. It's a blur, alien, so much I find it hard to spot the young woman in a landscape. I enjoy the painting though, even the tiny hole that attests to its age and a handler's careless movement years ago. It's obvious to me Grace and I won't agree about the Renoir, although we share a moment, mesmerized by some minor artist's misty portrait of the moon. Then a gallery filled with newer panoramic visions of Antarctic ice flows, a few valleys depicted from a height so intense, precise. I feel a flash of vertigo as though I'm standing tiptoed on the edge of a cliff. This, our holy pause to be amazed together, as if sharing a sunset or good news. What won't happen with the Renoir? Divisive, disputable, which, whether you like it or not, as together we do, proves it to be the work of a daring master. I'm going to read the title poem now. Escape Envy was on the Rattle Poets Respond website. This was about those two guys that escaped from prison in New York a few years back. Escape Envy. Dreams that belonged to each of us. Unbroken spirit versus unbreakable walls. I remember mine as vividly as leg irons, sniffing pollen from flowers at a highway's edge, hiding from marshals under a mound of brittle leaves in the garden, eating burgers in a dead cafe. So, when I heard those two guys made it out from Clinton Correctional in New York, through a hole in the wall, along pipes and hidden passageways, out a manhole into the movie-like rain, a part of me rejoiced. Not the part that knows human decency, not the part that wants to be safe in its discreet new life. No, that other part that wishes itself bravado, the visionary weighted down from years of longing. How it must feel for them to anticipate a soft mattress, softer arms embracing, first sniff at sizzle's sense of steak, and how confusing to learn the world has changed without them. Whatever world they dreamt of escaping to. It's there I leave them, as though putting down a paperback thriller, not wanting to read what happens next when truth does violence to their fantasies, as it will, and the gray fermented fruits of what was believed to be freedom squeeze sad wine into a glass from which these men already drank before. Well, it's snowing here in West Virginia. A lot of traffic accidents on the news this evening. So this is a traffic accident poem. One fatality.
Say hi, Daddy.
What a day, she must have thought, for travel. Steaming 90, sun-stroked, stoked, before clouds approached like battleships, waggling guns. How long did it take her to understand she was roving from a point in space, nowhere? That the end arrived in advance of the end intended. TV news flashed pictures of her candy apple compact car upside down on fire.
Idea?
In stills, we could almost passers-by staring through their dotted windows. Who doesn't witness catastrophic failure? How we stared at the screen for O.J. Simpson's slow speed Bronco chase. How amazed we were by those 7 comet fragments slamming into Jupiter. Elsewhere, far from touching us, no one wants a friend to overdose, a lover to acquire cancer. But one orange-red eruption in Hawaii looks so vivid from a living room in West Virginia. Ponds must be sacrificed to the glory of our eyes. Some drive to their deaths, some on a highway near my house. What hand pushing the next piece knows regret? I don't think I've read this one before. It's just a weird little piece. Why I can't have superpowers. I don't feel villainous until lasers clack like pool balls from my eyes. Hands devolve into vicious claws. Get out of my way. I look back at fantasy childhood and watch them turn, think, so I'm the bad guy here? I separate atoms of vehicle and driver in front of me on a slow day of stern, serious traffic lights. I melt vault doors using my flamethrower arms. Mind control? Don't ask. Really, don't. Plato, the invisible man makes himself king. Who could stop him? Here I come with my narcotic breath, my army of others like me, eager to strap you to the gurney, teach you sleep and bleak transcendence, let you learn to love suffering until we beg for mercy from ourselves. Oh, great and terrible brute, what have I done? So of course, when I got out of first thing I did was sign up for Facebook. It actually came out while I was locked up. And Facebook has a lot of issues of its own. And this is one of its quirks. This is called Facebook Keeps Telling Me. Facebook keeps telling me I should be friends with my ex-wife. Extend handshake and chivalrous salute as if we might hang out somewhere between servers and play gin rummy, digital checkers, as if not enemies isn't enough. We have to like each other and our posts. Her face appears sadly smiling on my screen, like a phantom, like any of 100,000 memories, ambiguous. Add friend. The social network strong arms me, demanding I send a new request, as though she wouldn't request in turn 20 years of her life back. And I wouldn't find it too disturbing to read about her relationship status, thumb through pictures of her travels to beaches, zoos, concerts, cathedrals, with whomever might prove martyr enough for love. I'm much too busy regretting, also trying to forget, and dancing in a dark and empty room while wondering how I should pitch Facebook on an add not enemy button for those we'd rather not know, except we do. All right, I'm just going to read one last one here. This is the last poem in the book. The dream turned religious right before I woke. All I remember, though earlier it found an action plot. The what I've lost as surely as the why. It shifted into prayer, not mine, not my beliefs, but some. I wasn't offended, bothered, angry, but spotted with easiness, as though I wore heating pads over aches and wounds, as though all gathered in this group and I were prisoners to the same Grendel-hearted warden. Our deaths would follow, or maybe escape, should the dream not break when it did, leaving me untroubled, as a gray squirrel at rest, warmed on its branch by the sun. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ace. Those were wonderful, and I loved hearing you read them, and I loved, of course, reading them beforehand even, and it's a great book, Escape Envy. You can't go wrong with this wonderful book.
Thanks, Charlie. Appreciate it.
And thank you. So our next reader is Joyce Savory. She was for 47 years a psychiatric RN at Stanford. She is a poet and artist. And in fact, Judy and I happen to have a lovely watercolor of Joyce's in our new room that we love to live in. Joyce has published poems. She's been writing for 55 years. She has poems in Minnesota Review, Bellingham Review, Sand Hill Review, and Palo Alto Review. And she is studying under some incredible poets. One of them is named Robert Bly. I don't know if anyone might recognize that name. Anyway, we are extremely privileged to have Joyce with us tonight. So take it away, Joyce.
Thank you, Charlie, and thank you everyone for coming. And I actually would like to begin the reading with a Robert Bly poem because he just passed away, as you know, on November 22nd. And the first time I saw Robert Bly was in Madison, Wisconsin at the university there in 1974. And he read for 2.5 hours, but he never read any of his own poems. For 2.5 hours, he read Neruda, Machado, Mirabai, Transtromer. He and all of it from the top of his head, never with a sheet of paper in front of him. And so to honor Robert Bly, I'd like to begin by reading one of his poems. And this is called Remo's Music. It's a ghazal, so I'll just say that for those that are not familiar, maybe there are 3 lines that almost are a poem unto themselves, and the stanzas are and can be very loosely associated with one another. Remo's music. It is such a joy to hear Remo's music when the night is just retreating from the oaky branches and the sun's enemy is throwing down his gloves. Last night, I wept so long and deeply in my dream because the fish were not returning to that bend in the river where I swam so often as a boy. Seeing that Jacob and Esau were both standing by their father's bed, the old fisherman sent hooks down and pulled the reckless boy up into the heavens. Some music is as beautiful as snow on twigs. I don't really see much distinction between words and the bow being drawn over the cello. Well, how shall we complain after that? We've been warned that what we receive on earth is smoke, fire, wind, mud, and darkness. It's all right to balance on top of a pole. People say if you want the magic thing hidden from all others, you'll have to have a life full of exaltation. So thank you to Robert. My first poem is The Prayer Rug. I will buy the prayer rug because the red runs so deep it comes close to the surface. When I run my hand across the wool, the surface of my hand touches the face of an old man with a straight nose. The straight lines make a square. The square opens up. There seems to be a way out. The hands take us. They go first. The blue threads appear to be black, and I see black, even though he points to his eyes and says, blue, see here, blue, blue. The end fans out unevenly, and the white specks stand out like flaws, like his mustache that he has mistakenly half shaved off. Can you see my mustache? I know it has turned white. It is important to me. You can see it from there. I tell him, yes, it is a fine mustache. I can hardly see his face now. There is a basilisk chained to my backbone. Our blood runs together, not playfully. I will buy the prayer rug because only Allah is perfect, and my hands have already carried it home. The morning moon. The morning moon is so quiet, hardly says a thing, never calls attention to itself, never calls others names. You don't detect any jealousy. No hoots and hollers from up her way. You wouldn't even know it's up there most days, especially in the city when so much is competing for our attention. It is so quiet, you almost want to pray to it, pray for it. I am reminded that silence deserves more respect. The soft-spoken, the whisper, the cat's face before sleep. The morning moon should have a name, an honorable, ethereal appellation. I suggest Sheila. Rags. I know rags, like a river knows rocks, like a tree knows sap, a shirt knows sweat. I have rags for cleaning the windows, rags for the men to clean their golf clubs, rags for the shower, and rags for wood planks. Old t-shirts get torn up for painting. The soft cotton absorbs linseed oil and cerulean blue. Don't mess with my rags. Now when nearby fires are raging, taking lives and homes, EPA Pruitt is giving away pristine Crystal Bay to a mining company. Guns bought legally are used to savagely kill concert goers, and Trump recklessly tries to destroy our democracy. I put my face in one and weep. Trying to nap with the watercolors of Chagall. My hand reaches over to turn back the cover of the book, but I'm afraid to open it, afraid to look. I mean, I know a little about what is there, love, and more than a spark or two. I know what's going on between that blue man and the red lady. Something makes her fly. Something makes him turn and turn again. There are bouquets and music. I can hear an open E, horsehairs drawn slowly beside the violin bridge. A workman's heavy wheeze, donkeys, more donkeys, hay carts and candles, roosters, apples, mattresses and wings, while I'm curling like a dog determined to sleep, Even on a day off, there are small fires to put out everywhere. Hi. Let's see. Poetry. Poetry gets to you. So what are the feelings it takes to write a poem worthy to be read or noticed by the guy on the street, hands in his pockets, looking over your shoulder, who, as you start to turn the page, says, wait a minute, I haven't finished that one. There it is. He wants it. There is more, and he wants that too. That's poetry. Jessie has gone forth. This is hope for the child leaving home. Jessie has gone forth. She is off again, this time to New York. Farther away still into another unknown that will bring her hopefully internally to a home other than the one she has known here. She is carrying Diebenkorn and Egon Schiele, E. Cummings, Whitman, and Oliver, all stones she picked up along the road. When she feels them in her pocket and turns them slowly round and round, will they bring her sustenance when she is hungry for what she doesn't know? Perhaps they will at least help quell as well as feel the uncertainty we are all familiar with. We don't know when we go forth what the day will bring, but we go with courage given us by those that left words, stories, images, evidence of faith and of their imagination behind. And my last poem is Nothing Like Homegrown Tomatoes. 100 tiny seeds in warm vermilion juice, fresh off the vine, beefsteak, brandywine, beefsteak, Mary Robinson, fresh off the ground, plump and round, Sister Sicilian, cherry, snow white, sun sugar sweet. No summer palette complete without those red wheels covered with mail, topped with avocado on dark brown bread. Classic early wonder, classic black pearl, early Annie, early girl. Mamma mia, no sauce better than from homegrown, pick of the season, come June, come to me. Little ones, large ones, brilliant in the sun ones, loving the day's rays, intense heat. I repeat, cherry, sun sugar sweet. Sweet heat, sweet meat. You Jersey devil, God is love. You early wonder, say yes, come to me.
Oh, I want a tomato sandwich right now. And look what she did. The morning moon should have a name. And she suggests Sheila Kelly, our friend, is here. We'll have to find out what she thinks about that. And if any of us ever go blind, maybe, and we want to see a Chagall, maybe we could ask Joyce to read that poem. She painted Chagall with words. It was amazing. Thank you so much, Joyce, for reading with us tonight. It was great.
Thank you.
So now I get to introduce Jim Hutt. We've been friends for 55 years. It hasn't been easy. He plays golf. Need I say more? Anyway, he is, his interest in poetry and photography began in the 1970s, influenced primarily by Joyce and his brother. He's a psychotherapist with a PhD in clinical psychology. He maintains a practice in Northern California, working with high conflict couples, addiction recovery, and individuals on the autism spectrum. He also provides expert witness testimony for the family and criminal courts of the Superior Court of California. So I try not to break any laws when I'm around Jim, in case he might be testifying about me. But anyway, so here's what happened. Our friend Monica Beglow, who was Monica Zumbrum, was our first editor in high school, published us both in the St. Mary's Gales newspaper. I don't know what it was called. And so then Monica saw some of Jim's photographs and suggested that Jim should maybe send me some of his photos and I ought to try writing some poems. And that's how this thing got going. And it's just been wonderful. And then we got it all together and we sent this to Steve Cott, who's here tonight. And he got this book together from inception of the idea to the actual book, holding it in our hands, was about 3.5 months. And Steve Cott from Inspired Books put this thing together, and just absolutely beautiful book, which I'd be glad to sell anybody, and so would Jim, for almost nothing. You can write me at charlie.brice, B-R-I-C-E, @gmail.com for details. Anyway, so Jim, I thought maybe you could start out by talking about some photographs, and I'll read the poem.
All right, I'll put the photographs on the screen and we can go through them one by one. If anybody wants to buy a book from me versus from Charlie, which I would recommend, you can reach me at drjhutt@comcast.net, and we can work it out. If you're local, I'll deliver it. If you're not, I'll mail it. Okay, so let's see. Let me get these on the screen. Okay, there's the first photograph. I presume everybody can see it. It's called The Parlor. And when I saw this scene, it moved me because of its darkness, but also because of the light showing through the beautiful lace curtains. And as I began to examine it after I did a little bit of post-processing, I began to associate to the cultural situation we're in now, the empty, cold room devoid of people, like a lot of rooms are now, because of COVID death or COVID quarantine. A lot of us excluded from seeing our friends, hugging our friends, gatherings canceled. On the other hand, there's plenty of light on the other side of the curtains, but it isn't the light that's lighting up the room, not yet. And so we're all waiting for that. And this photograph is my way of kind of documenting the experience of what we're going through culturally right now. And Charlie wrote a wonderful poem about it. And Charlie, maybe you would read that for us now.
All right, this is called The Parlor. This is where they sat, those men in their three-piece suits, chains and fobs reflecting their glory, beards trimmed to frame cigars, lips cured with brandy. This is where they conjured the world they would make, brazed the place it held for them alone, and where they cemented exclusions, blacks, browns, yellows, and women, those who had to be other in order to keep those men comfortable behind the lacy scrim of their lives.
Thank you, Charlie. See, to me, when you write those words, when you're writing about the darkness of exclusion, it's the same thing as COVID. It's 3 other diseases in my mind: patriarchy, oligarchy, and racism. And that also is part of what this photograph is about. Okay, the next one. When the Barn Knows the End is the title of this. This is a Minnesota barn, and if you've ever been through the northern part of Minnesota in the Lake Country there, and it's all agriculture, and there are hundreds and hundreds of barns, many of them old and decaying. And what caught my eye with this one was the innocent face-like, the front of it. Many of the barns are left to decay there. They become overgrown with brush, trees. If the barn could talk, I figured this one would be saying, does anyone care about me anymore? The loft window eyes are dark and lifeless. The double front door mouth is muted by the brush that's covering it. Charlie wrote a wonderful poem about this. Whereas, death seems to give way to more life. Charlie found that when he wrote about the barn. And by the way, he and I did not collaborate on the photograph and his writing. He saw the photograph and he wrote. It's interesting how I saw doom and gloom in the image, and Charlie saw something quite different. Charlie, if you would.
I think maybe I'll just preface this by saying, when Jim sent me these photographs, they were so inspiring. I got 22 poems written under a month, and each one went through anywhere from 3 to 15 revisions. But I think also it's because of our long, loving relationship that we've had as near brothers and best friends that helped me just write these babies. So this is called When the Barn Knows the End. All efforts to anneal this sagging giant abandoned years ago. Field mice love it, eat the stale hay, retrieve their babies when they stray. Yellow jackets know it's a haven for generations of stingers. Soldier ants march up and down splintered slats, happy to serve their queen. Termites digest hand-hewn beams that held once tons of bales and supported stalls that caged angry stallions and obstinate cows. The men who built her never traveled more than 50 miles from her cozy loft and are gone forever. She knows what's coming, all right. Still, what a beginning this ending is.
Thank you, Charlie. The next poem is, or picture is the abandoned Lund farmhouse. Now this farmhouse, it's interesting. The more I think about this place, the more it comes to mind. It's located on Minnesota Highway 35, about 15 minutes from our cabin on Pelican Lake. And it's the lake, by the way, which my wife Joyce grew up on. We drive by this house numerous times every summer when we're going back and forth between the cabin and Fargo. It's a fascinating piece of property, as you can see by the architecture, and it's been vacant for I don't know how long, at least 30 or 40 years. But what's interesting to me is that Joyce, growing up in Moorhead, probably drove by this house when it was occupied. I'm guessing. But of course, as little kids, we never notice our surroundings. We're too busy fighting with each other in the car. It's huge, it's imposing, and for those reasons, it reminds me of a home I lived in Reno, which was also huge and imposing, but has since been torn down. And I often remember that house, playing around it as kids above the Truckee River, and this house conjures up those sorts of memories. And Charlie wrote an absolutely magnificent piece about it.
Thank you, Jim. It's called Abandoned Lund Farmhouse. What a going concern it was. The missus rose early, mixed flour, milk, vanilla, eggs, baking soda, and oil to whip up in the big ceramic bowl and ladle onto the preheated cast iron skillet. Those pancake stacks were massive. The mister ate a dozen slathered with butter from their Guernsey and baptized in syrup painstakingly gathered from their maples in the fall. He could hardly feel the forks, so calloused were his hands. The girl and the boy, table-wise, ready for their long walk to school, ponytails and milk with her stack, scalding hot coffee with his libation into manhood. How the place buzzed with breath. How distant death, clothes on the line, windows open to tomorrow, to a future breeze. And now amid dust and mold, rotten floorboards, sloping eaves. There's only wonder.
Wonderful. Thank you, Charlie. This image is called the Duet. When I saw this image, it immediately caught my eye. Not only because Joyce plays both the violin and the piano really, really well, so it's wonderful to have music in the house. But it also reminds me, every time I see this image, it reminds me of the Leonard Cohen song, Dance Me to the End of Love, which to me is one of the best songs that I've ever heard in my life and touches me very deeply. So this image, the Duet, is really my homage in memoriam of the Holocaust. Every time I hear the song, I move to tears. It's just a wonderful song. Now, ironically, Charlie's reference in his poem to Beethoven's Kreutzer Sonata also is also a novella by Tolstoy, is also about rage and murder. And of course, he and I didn't collaborate on this, but not that they're the same, but they're related. So Charlie, take it away.
Well, when I saw this incredible photograph that Jim took, I thought right away about my father-in-law, Benjamin Alexander, and his whole family. They all came over and were at Ellis Island. And so this is actually a very true story. It's called Duet. They loved each other, those brothers who made their way from Ellis Island to Boston Latin and into the American dream. Joseph, a composer and pianist. Ben, a physician violinist who discovered the seventh clotting factor of the blood. That final evening, they played Beethoven's Kreutzer Sonata, Joseph on piano, Ben on violin. Such hearty music full of strength, hope, and strife. And when the vibrations of that last presto returned the room to its silent nature, Joseph lifted his hands from the keyboard. That was good, he said. Yes, his brother replied, put down his violin and bow, and died.
Oh, absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
This image, for which the book is named, Old Woodshop. I could sit in this room for hours, smelling the wood, smelling the oils, touching things. I like to build things. I would love to have a wood shop like this and know how to make all that stuff like they made. Now, this image was found at the Western Minnesota Steam Threshers reunion, which happens every year in the thriving metropolis of Rolog, Minnesota. And it is just a wonderful event that's on 200 acres, which is a step back in time. All the machines are steam driven. Everything in there is handmade. And it gives you a weekend of participating with, watching close up and looking at how life was on the prairie back in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. It was the latest technology. What you see in this room was the latest technology back in those days. If you look closely, the room's not cluttered. There's a lot of stuff in it, but it's not cluttered. These people worked very, very meticulously and specifically on things. And when I see this image, it reminds me of how divorced we are from the land, from nature. The shop itself reminds me of our personal dependence upon one another and how we've lost it. It's all about creating what was needed, sharing knowledge with an apprentice. In here, you didn't make any money. You made life livable for other people. Charlie's poem perceptively points out that nothing was wasted. Charlie, would you read it, please?
Here we go. Old woodshop. I must say, I mean, this photograph was so outstanding, and I just knew it had to get on the cover. So I was just so such a beautiful, the texture of this photograph is incredible. Old wood shop. This is where hands counted, and all that was done with muscle, sweat, heart, and heft. This is where wood chips lived under splintered fingernails, and calluses grew like spring corn. Here, the hearth is fed with failures that flourish in flames. Nothing goes to waste. Here, the examined life curls back upon itself like the shaved swirls wound round a hand plane. Everything in this room once respired, housed birds, squirrels, and forest voles, soaked up sun and conjured shade. And now, these final gifts, shapes to sit, to eat, to rest, spirits to lift, skills that test the best.
Nothing I could say about that. It's just amazing. Thank you, Charlie. This image is the railroad car. This was also something at the Steam Threshers reunion. I've seen it there every time I go, and I decided finally to take the time to produce my own version, my own rendition of the image of this railroad car. It's always been kind of something irresistibly magnetic about an old boxcar for me. It's kind of like the ocean, you know, you wonder what's beneath the depths of the ocean. And when I look into through that door from a distance, I wonder what's in there, who's been in there, what stuff did it move, where did it begin, where did it end? There must be 1,000 stories about it from people who have been in there. And, you know, invariably, one of the requisite features of a boxcar is the smell of urine. So at least I know that it's still being used. And if you look at it, what also caught my eye about this is that it's made of wood. The frame is steel, but all the boards, the texture of the boards, I think is fantastic. And Charlie's poem about it had me wondering, you know, he and I met at a time when, in essence, he and I sat on the steps of this boxcar metaphorically, and when you hear his poem, you'll understand what I mean. Charlie?
Well, actually, I think Jim's just too shy to say that. I believe this is where Jim lived after he got out of the Navy in the 70s. I'm not sure about that, but no, actually. So when I saw this photograph, what I thought about immediately was Allen Ginsberg's poem, Sunflower Sutra, where he sits on the steps of a railroad car talking to Jack Kerouac. And so that's what really got me going here. And so this is called Railroad Car, after Sunflower Sutra by Allen Ginsberg. Allen Ginsberg sat next to Jack Kerouac on the rusty iron steps of a railroad car and looked at his first sunflower. He was elated. After all, Blake's sunflower, while weary of time, had gifted him so many fine visions. It was 70 years ago that Jack announced to Allen, "That's a sunflower." Allen asked when it had forgotten it was a sunflower because it was gray and dead. Did he know then that Jack would mock him for being Jewish, say the most disgusting anti-Semitic things to him? Allen, himself a sunflower, sat in the murky shade of the boxcar's little door, an opening that he always praised, a space of perpetual forgiveness. For if you were his friend, you stayed his friend. Their friendship in full bloom that day, Allen looked up to Jack like a sunflower would, black-eyed and full of hope, and pushed away suspicion that we all forget our natures as we bounce along those lonely rails towards our journey's end.
Thank you, Charlie.
You know what? And that also reminds me of us. We've been friends for so long. We've been on so many journeys together. And it's just been a wonderful ride.
Well, and I of course would never say anything anti-Semitic to you, but I have a lot of Irish things I could say. The last one, the laughing boy. Well, this is not a recent picture. This is a picture taken, I'm guessing in 1992 or so. It's my son, Jake, who's now 33. And this is what joy and thrill looked like when he got drenched in a water balloon fight in our front yard with the neighborhood kids and parents. And my thought was, as I didn't think it as I saw the picture, I just saw the picture at the time and said, oh my God, that's amazing. Is that I wonder if I ever felt that way as a kid. I presume I did, but it's just a truly amazing slice of time. You know, he's an elite athlete. He's a very competitive guy, but this was all before competition, when there was no winning or losing. It was just for having fun. And Charlie's poem hit the nail on the head. You know, it's been said that we'll learn more from our kids than we'll ever learn from us. And I suspect that's why I've never lost track of this photograph. Whenever I want to feel good, all I got to do is look at this. Charlie?
Well, that's what I mean, I saw this photograph and it was just stunning. And yeah, the whole room just lit up while I looked at this photograph. The laughing boy, he's there somewhere inside of us. Can we find him? Twist our shirts, shiver with laughter, with delight, shake with the joy of existence. He's in the beginning and the end. Nothing stands between his belly laugh and his exuberance. If we find him, we will relish absurdity, even celebrate it. That laughing boy inside us calendars our best days, punctuates our dark gestures, rescues us from despair. Framed in white and black, he is our dream of happiness, the exaltation of breath.
Thank you, Charlie. That was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I really appreciate this happening, this coming together, and working with you on a project. Would never have imagined this from back in the 60s would end up here today doing this.
That's for sure. I mean, you know, I think about, I just have this image of us in the hallways of St. Mary's. We had lockers next to one another trying to survive the nuns. And we did finally survive the nuns, and it was great. And it's just been a wonderful friendship. And it's just something that I cherish more than anything else in life. And so we thought maybe we'd open it up if Cameron would unmute everybody, or you can just unmute yourselves if you want to ask any questions or make any comments about our process or Jim's photographs or my poetry. We invite you to do so.
I might add that when Charlie says we survived the nuns, that's code. What it's code for is between the two of us about 25 years collectively in psychotherapy.
Yeah. But you know, they were such muses to me. I mean, I've published so many poems about them and how awful they were that sometimes I feel I should tithe.
Well, I've known many, many nuns that were not Dominican since then who were just marvelous people and marvelous teachers. So I think that, you know, we had a different experience with this group of people, with this particular order. That's the way it goes. Anyway, Charlie and I are both open. We have a few minutes left if anybody wants to make a comment or ask a question.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sure. Who are you?
Okay.
Oh,
Hi,
now, Lori, I see you, Lori Gerio, the publisher, one of the two publishers of Word Tech. Publisher house. Wonderful. Go ahead, Lori.
Well, in the farmhouse one, the missus is mixing flour and eggs, and is it flowers or flour?
It was flour. I hope it wasn't flowers because it could have poisoned the The pancakes.
Well, I read that and I was thinking, I saw, flower as in like like a rose or, and I thought she would take, flowers off the table in a vase and, just put that sunshine in the pancake.
Well, that's something Charlie would do, but no, that's not
Well,
something she would do.
Actually, Lori, I like that image better than the one I have. I think it would be a wonderful, it would be kind of a South American type of surrealism. Gabriel Garcia Marquez maybe would have flowers springing out of those pancakes. I think I might go back and redo this poem. Thank you for that.
Thanks so much, Charlie.
Jim,
Yes. Hi, Ed.
I share sarcasm and golf with Jim. So I'm curious why he didn't do a duet too with a driver and a golf ball.
Ed, see, this is why I rely on you. Because you think of things like that I would never think of. I will make one of that.
Well, Ed,
That's
I don't know you, but if he ever did anything like that, I'd probably kill him.
Well, you can't from Pittsburgh. I mean, I know you think you're omnipotent, but no, you can't.
Yes, oh yes, I will do it.
Which club? I'm already plotting this. How many balls?
How many balls does it take for a golfer to change his mind? That's a Zen cone.
Ron, do you have a question?
No, just enjoying the day.
Thank you for
Thank-
coming, Ron.
Glad you're
Thanks,
here.
Charlie.
Anyone else?
Just thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Thank you,
And I
Joe.
really look forward to it. And it was wonderful to hear Joyce for the first time, to hear Ace again, work I'm very fond of, and to hear Charlie and to hear Dr. Jim. You see these beautiful photographs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I just want to also say thank you. It was so beautiful. I'm so blessed to be neighbors with Joyce and with Jim, and I feel very, very honored that they are in my life. But those poems, all of you, what was the first fellow's name? Ace?
Ace Coach.
Ace. That
Ace
was
Coaches.
so touching. So touching. I mean, the feelings and I mean, I could almost feel what you went through in those poems that you read, and I was very touched by that. And Joyce, I didn't know you were a poet. My gracious me, I didn't. And those pictures were beautiful, Jim. Thank you. And then your poems were so descriptive. I really enjoyed this event, and I have eaten some of those wonderful tomatoes that Joyce wrote her poems about. So, and they were very good. All right, Joel, thanks.
Thanks for
Oh,
coming.
thank
We
you,
really
Linda.
appreciate it.
I would love to have a few of those, but I must say that while I was reading that other poem, I thought about Joyce makes the most incredible oatmeal pancakes. Oh my God. I would like to have a couple of those right now too. So
Well, I think the world has improved itself in this past hour because of the power of the words we've shared here. I'm Mary, I'm in Phoenix, and I'm an editor. And I was thinking about all of the events that I've attended on Zoom, weddings, funerals, christenings, bat mitzvah, and now a book launch of a poetry group. And this has been by far my favorite one. And Charlie, I'd like to challenge you to write the Zoom poem if you can, because I don't think there's anybody else who could tackle a Zoom poem quite like you. I know you've already tackled Alexa, so thank you. I'm off to become a climate activist on my next Zoom call. It was nice to see all of you. Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
Mary. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, bye.
I would just like to say thank you to all of you, the readers especially, and Jim, especially you, because without the pictures, where would the readers be?
Well,
No?
and Charlie, I keep trying to tell Charlie, where would he be without me? It's
I
true.
know.
Pretty much. I agree. I agree.
I love those pictures, and I might even choose one or two to try to write a poem to myself, but in any case, I think you really did a stunning job. When it was, the whole thing was just incredibly moving, including the acts ahead of time. And Joyce, I'm just gonna look and see if there's a morning moon tomorrow. Thank you all.
You know, I want to thank everybody. I don't want to keep Cameron going here too much longer. And he just, or they, Cameron, just did a wonderful job. And I also, Cameron, I certainly hope that people think about going to the C.C. Miller Library website and looking it over. It's a beautiful library. Thank you so much. And, you know, any contribution would be most welcome. So Cameron, thanks again for all your wonderful help with our project.
Yes, absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Charlie, Jim, Joyce, Ace, you've all done a fantastic job. Thank you for joining us. To everyone in the audience. My name is Cameron again.
Coming. What a wonderful thing you decided to spend your Thursday night with us. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.